Okay. Wow, we're live here, and you can see how many listeners we have so far, which is 0. But we'll get started, and I'm sure people will be joining us. And Dave, to write a comment, I'm putting a link here to the blog I wrote about your upcoming teaching and our upcoming workshop online on May 20th. So yes, now Lisa's here. Now, Lisa, can you tell us if you can hear us? We just turned it on. We'll like Lisa, but we need Lisa or somebody to.
Yep, Lisa said volume is good.
Oh, great. Okay. So now, following your lead, Lisa, I'm going to introduce myself and Jill on today's podcast. Now, today is February 18th. And it's 3:01 p.m. here in California, and we're broadcasting from the Murrieta Studios, which is just my office in my house. And I'm very excited to be working with my esteemed colleague, Jill Levitt, today. And for a long time, I've been telling Jill, we've got to have the David and Jill show and figure some way to, publish it, because Jill and I worked together at Stanford. Jill started out, she can tell you her story, but as a student coming to my Tuesday group, I don't know, about 5-10 years ago, after moving to the West Coast from New York, and you did your personal work and then learned the team therapy model, and just blossomed into a fantastic therapist and teacher. And when we teach together, or when we do co-therapy together, it's just one of the best things in the world. A lot of magic happens, and I've been wanting to figure out some way to share that magic, to bottle it a little bit, and so today is the first step in doing that. Now, am I supposed to announce anything else that Lisa said? We've got the location, the day. We had our hike today. Hand me that thing there.
Yes.
Yeah, one exciting thing is I purchased this high-powered 4-channel digital recorder, and we used it 3 channels on today's hike. We had a patient who was actually a mental health professional who was feeling like a bad mother, and she was tearful at the beginning of the hike, and so there were 2 co-therapists. Zane Pierce from our Tuesday group was my co-therapist, and David, and then the 3 of us were mic'd, so we have good professional quality audio. And so I'm hoping it will evolve into a kind of a hiking with David type of podcast too, so people can at least in part join the Tuesday hikes. The work was just fantastic, and her negative feelings, she just went from sobbing and shame and intense anxiety and anger at herself to really jubilation and laughter and joy at the end of the session. And also, I announced last week, and I haven't told you this, I don't think, Jill, that I would announce maybe a new breakthrough, a new dimension in team therapy today.
Okay.
But we'll talk about that in a little bit. But it worked on the hike. It was the thing that turned her around. But why don't I think we should have David shut up and let Jill take over a little.
Should I say a little more about myself, or should we get started answering questions?
Talk about me mainly.
That's what I was going to do as part of introducing myself.
Yeah, introduce yourself. Yeah.
Okay. So so my name is Jill Levitt, and I'm a clinical psychologist, and I'm also the director of training at the Feeling Good Institute in Mountain View, California. And as David said, I moved to California from New York about 10 years ago. And before moving here, I was actually really fortunate to have fantastic training in CBT. I was trained by David Barlow and Stefan Hoffman at BU, and I got to do some great training with Edna Foa. And so I came here feeling like a pretty good and seasoned, experienced CBT therapist. But I sought out David when I moved here because I was starting up a private practice here, having closed my practice in New York City, and I wanted to just consult with you on some cases. Do you recall I I sent David an email out of the blue and said, hey, would you be available to consult with me on some cases? I'm just opening a practice here. And he said, well, I don't do the individual consultation, but would love you to, join my Tuesday evening psychotherapy training group. And so I started attending that as a student, as you said, and totally got hooked on the team CBT model that David's been developing. And to turn it back to you, you profoundly changed my life, both, on a personal level, because I totally practice what I preach and use all the skills in my own personal life too. And then on a professional level, making, CBT that much more, in my opinion, that much more powerful and connected and rewarding because of the empathy training that you offer therapists, and also all of the kind of what's called paradoxical agenda setting, dealing with patients' resistance and motivation. It's just been really exciting.
Yeah, and we have a couple questions that we selected. I've been getting tons of questions from listeners to the podcast, as well as my weekly Feeling Good podcast with Fabrice and I. Those listeners have been writing tons of questions. You folks have been writing in tons of questions. So we've got a lot. We're just going to answer a few to get things warmed up, and then we'll take you folks' questions. But I just want to say hello to a few people. One celebrity, in my opinion, Rob DiGregorio from Boston. And Rob gave me that fantastic T-shirt.
The Tom Brady?
The Tom Brady.
Nice, a Patriots fan.
Yes, he said I was the Tom Brady of psychotherapy.
You are. But you didn't win the Super Bowl for us this year.
No. But Rob, I have to confess that Jill's family is totally gung-ho on the New England Patriots. Her two boys are total fans.
Right.
And I gifted them the T-shirt that you gave to me.
Yes.
How did they like it?
It's combined with the rest of our collection of Patriots paraphernalia. So thank you, Rob.
But Rob is one of my most intelligent and loyal fans, and a good friend and colleague in the whole world. And my next book, which I've been working on, folks, you've been asking about that. I was editing it before the hike this morning, actually. I got up at 6 o'clock and was working on it, feeling great. And it's going to be dedicated to Rob. He gave permission for that, as well as to Obi.
Wow.
Those two.
That's amazing.
And so good. It's great to have you joining us, Rob. And then also Dwight Swabak says, hi, you two. Dwight is a psychiatrist from the Sacramento area. You might remember he used to drive down for the Tuesday group.
Yeah.
And then Julianne Lindeen is here again. Mike Karampur, thank you. Welcome, Mike. TJ Lucian. He has a question about pleasure predicting cheat. We can answer.
And Yehuda, yeah, I've known Yehuda from training groups and things. Yeah. Is
Yehuda the one in Mexico?
Yes, I think so.
Oh, that's you, because there's two with similar names.
I believe so.
Well, so it's good to see you, Yehuda, and so that's enough for us to get started on a couple of questions here. So
did you want me to, there was this question we were talking about before. A couple wrote in and said that they've been listening to your podcast for months and trying to practice the EAR technique, the 5 secrets of effective communication. And they admitted—
EAR, for those of you who don't know, is empathy, assertiveness, and respect, the 3 dimensions of effective communication. Yeah, and they acknowledged that they felt like they failed miserably last week when dealing with their teenage daughter's boyfriend. So should I read this?
Sure.
So it says, we've gotten into an icky position. He accused us of being controlling, as we would not allow her to go with him to a music festival weekend 8 hours drive away. We explained all the reasons that we wouldn't allow it to happen.
In parentheses,
he was quite aggressive and rude.
Right.
And I guess was upset. How come the daughter can go with her girlfriend and her girlfriend's parents, but isn't allowed to go with the boyfriend? Mm-hmm. And we explained all of our reasons of why it's not okay with us, and have ended up with him not coming over to our home in a week. And below is what happened in the dialogue. So the boyfriend said to the parents, "You're so controlling, and I don't understand why.
like why the daughter can't go to the musical festival. And this couple wrote in and said that they responded by saying, we're happy for her to go, and we're not trying to stop you from seeing each other there, but we do not feel that is the safest option for her to go with you, as you will be chasing an 18+ experience. That's the Australian legal drinking age. And she is 16, and we need to know that being that far away, she'll be dropped off and picked up from the venue, not via public transport, but by the trusted parent. So, and they say, we know we said everything wrong because we were so shocked at his anger. And my husband and I have role played, which is pretty admirable. They've been trying to practice, right? Yeah. Trying to get it right. But we're aware we jumped straight into defending our decision. Can you offer some tips on what we should say, as there will most likely be a next time, since he is an angry little soul?
Yeah. Well, a couple things, and we were talking about this earlier. I also touched base with my wife on this one. Whenever I'm stuck, I check with Melanie, and she figures things out in about 2 seconds that I obsess about for months and can't figure out. But one thing is, I think I have a lot of praise for the person who wrote this. Let's see, what's her first name? Mel?
Yeah, Mel Smith.
Yeah. From 2 points of view. First of all, the fact that you wrote, that you're being humble, that you're practicing with your husband, that you're listening to podcasts and trying to improve your communication with loved ones, and in this case, someone that your daughter is dating, I think is just fantastic. My hat's off to you, even though I'm not wearing a hat. And I just think that's great. And also, while I think Jill and I together will have a lot of ways you can improve your response, I would have to say that it wasn't terrible. You have to set limits sometimes. Your daughter is very precious, and sometimes when you set limits, people will be angry with you because they're not getting what they want, and sometimes you have to say, oh well, we'll accept that because we love our daughter and we don't want her to be in a dangerous situation. All that being said, oh, and Ellen is here. Ellen Sand from the Feeling Good Institute. Hi, Ellen. Let me put a like you here. I don't know what these likes are, but I know you're supposed to like them. So I'm hitting. Ellen Vendana is here. Oh, and John Graham. Oh, John, I've got some news for you that is very exciting. A conversation that we had a few days ago ended up transforming today's hike. You might be interested in knowing. Yeah, so anyway, so let's talk about how this could be improved a little bit.
Okay. So David and I were talking about this before. So yes, on the one hand, as parents, obviously, or being in a relationship with someone that you want to protect and keep safe, it makes sense to set limits. At the same time, I'm gathering that it's also their goal to have a good relationship with this boyfriend of the daughter, right? They're not just saying, screw you, we don't care. They actually want to have a good relationship with him. So I think they probably understand this, but the main error that I would say they made is that they just simply jumped to defending their position, right? So this boyfriend is saying, you're being so controlling. And I'm guessing that there's part of him that actually feels hurt because it seems like they don't trust him, right? I'm sort of making this up, but I gather he's been dating the daughter for a while. They have him over the house a lot, and he's saying, you're being so controlling, and I don't understand why. And so I would start with the disarming technique and also offering some feeling empathy. So I would say something like, yeah, absolutely. So I would say something like, John, you're right. We are being a bit controlling. And I can understand you feeling confused because we probably haven't really explained our position to you. I'm guessing that you might feel kind of frustrated and maybe even hurt, like we're not trusting you and you haven't done anything other than earn our trust. And then I would move to, as you said, some stroking. We really like you and care about you, and you've been a really great boyfriend to our daughter. So that's sort of the disarming, the feeling empathy, the thought empathy. And then I would share my feelings. And the stroking, right? That's you've been a really good boyfriend. We really care about you. And then I would express my feelings, which essentially is how I would set the limit. I would say, I feel as hopefully you'll one day, find out, I feel incredibly concerned and worried about the safety of my daughter being in an environment when she's only 16 and there's going to be lots of drinking. And, I feel worried and feel like her safety is my number one concern. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from and wanting to make sure that she's got adults to drive her home. And
I'm also feeling bad because I can see you're probably rightfully feeling kind of pissed off at us, and I don't want to hurt your feelings and make your life unpleasant either. So I'm feeling kind of uncomfortable too, and I wouldn't feel so uncomfortable if I didn't like you so much.
Absolutely. And I would also probably say the stroking, the complimenting piece would also say, gosh, I bet there aren't that many boyfriends who would confront their girlfriend's parents like this. I actually kind of appreciate your honesty, even though it's sort of like awkward to have this conversation. It's great that you're coming to us and telling us how you really feel. I'm sure most boyfriends just, kiss up and try to pretend everything's okay. Now we can have an honest conversation about how we're each feeling.
Yeah. And then another thing we talk about with our daughter that worked pretty well is that as you grow older, we'll become less controlling, and you'll be gaining more autonomy and more independence, and we love that about you too and our daughter. And you're 18, she's 16, but the time will be evolving quickly. If the two of you do love each other, we'll become more of an independent kind of relationship. Absolutely. Like what you're hoping for. And we might misestimate sometimes and be too controlling. You may even be right about that, but I'd rather err on the side of being too controlling rather than to make the mistake of doing something that my daughter was hurt or got into some bad situation. I don't think I could forgive myself if that happened. But all that being said, we hear what you're saying, and gosh, we agree with you. How's that?
Sounds great. Yeah. Sounds beautiful. And I think the key that we're wanting to hit on here is that even with kids, right, and even with young kids, I have a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old, and even when they're angry with me for setting a limit, I don't unset the limit, but I can definitely be really respectful to them and really empathic to how frustrated they might feel or disappointed or right? And have I don't have to just defend myself and say tough luck, this is why, but I can empathize with how upset they might feel. Yeah,
and I think that one reason it's hard to learn the 5 secrets of effective communication, although I make them real simple and you can look at a chart and see what they are. It's like playing a musical instrument, and like you have a really elegant use of them. But it's really blending things together in a beautiful way. And it's not all this and it's not all that. And that's true of all of team therapy, really. We make it simple, but it's really sophisticated. Let's take.
So we have one more that's related to the same topic. So so the question is, how do we stop ourselves from giving excuses when we're being falsely attacked? So again, this is someone who understands that we recommend if someone attacks you, that you actually use some disarming and some empathy and some stroking. And yet if someone falsely attacks you, this person's saying, how do we keep ourselves from giving excuses? So David, can I hit you with this one? Can I say it to you in a role play and just have you respond?
Yeah, and then we'll do a role reversal and hear something really elegant.
Okay. All right. So this would be basically the example the person is asking is if I say to you, I'm trying to think, so imagine I'm trying to think gender here, but basically I say, I can't believe it, you've been sleeping with my boyfriend.
Well, it's been great. That's David's dark humor. Sometimes I like to just give terrible responses to break the tension. I wouldn't do that in real. It's just for your entertainment, hopefully. But I would say it's really painful for me to hear what you're saying right now, and it sounds like you feel really angry and hurt and betrayed, and you say I've been sleeping with your boyfriend. How devastating is that? like kicking you in the stomach. I want you to know that I haven't slept with your boyfriend, and I would never do something like that to betray you. But I have to agree that I must have failed you and not made you feel you can trust me, and I feel so hurt and ashamed because I love you, I care about you, you're my best friend, and obviously I've really screwed up. Can you tell me more of the things I've done or said that have made you feel suspicious and angry and hurt and mistrustful? I really want to hear what you have to say. This is really, really important. How's that?
That was awesome.
Was
A+.
it? Oh,
yeah,
really? Why?
yeah. I thought that was beautiful. Why? Because, well, you don't seem defensive at all, although you do hold your truth, right?
Yeah.
Which is that I didn't do it and I would never do something like that to hurt you. But you disarm, or you agree with the fact that there must be something I've done or said that's made you feel untrusting toward me. And you also did beautiful stroking. I really care about you. You're my best friend, and I must have let you down in some way. It's like,
yeah.
There's truth to what the person is saying. There's not truth to the fact that you slept with a boyfriend or whatever, but there's truth to the fact that the person is feeling hurt. They're feeling let down by you. They're feeling mistrusting of you. And instead of just defending and saying that's ridiculous, I don't even know who your boyfriend is, you make the attacker feel very cared about.
Yeah. And another thing, I think your own philosophy about it is important too. A lot of people, when you get into conflict, say with your patient, if you're a therapist or your spouse or a family member or friend, a lot of people are kind of conflict phobic and think, well, if you're at odds with someone, it means you have a bad relationship. Or if your patient is giving you bad empathy scores and is ticked off at you, then you're failing and you're a failure, and you go into all this shame and anxiety and angst about it. But actually, I've always felt that in therapy, your worst failure is your greatest success in disguise. If you'll just talk with the patient about his or her anger and the things you've said or done that hurt their feelings, you can use that to deepen the relationship. And the same, with a friend. I have for years worked with Jerry Piaget, who's the head of the IAHB, they've sponsored my workshops all over the country from time to time. And I would say 2 or 3 times we've had to negotiate something or other and got kind of ticked off at each other. And I always say, Jerry, I'm kind of ticked off at you, and you seem pretty annoyed with me too. And we'll talk this through and deepen our relationship. I said, for me, this is how it goes. Sometimes, when I'm working with someone I really like or have a friend, we get angry and have a fight, and we fight it out and listen to each other, and then that deepens our relationships. And I just know that's going to happen with us too. And then it always does work.
Absolutely.
Like that. And so when you put it into that kind of format, that helps you feel more relaxed about it. But it's hard to believe at first, because when you're failing, it just feels like you're a failure or something horrible is happening.
Yeah, and I think actually the 5 secrets, what we're talking about, this framework for really connecting with other people, it's a way that you can disarm and kind of de-escalate when someone is angry with you. And then it's also a way to be able to share your thoughts and feelings, as you said you do with Jerry and I do with other people when I'm feeling upset with someone else, right? Is to be able to see the world through their eyes and assertively share my own feelings.
Yeah. Well, we got some questions here. I want to point out something up at the top of the broadcast here. I put a link. I can't quite exactly see it. I'm going to like my comment, but I put a link to the a Feeling Good blog of, was it yesterday? And I can't see my link. It's up here. It's kind of grayed out, but you can link to it. And then those of you who are therapists, there's a lot of good online training there. Some that Jill is doing, some Daniel Minty. Really, some are free, some are paid things. But if you really want to go into some of these things deeper, if you're a therapist, I strongly recommend that. I mean, you can see what a fabulous teacher and person Jill is, and so that's something you can do to really go in deeper on some of these things. And
right, we're just scratching the surface. And actually, to say that even further, David, on Tuesday nights when we work together at Stanford and during in all of our training groups and workshops, we actually bring all of these methods to life using role playing like this, right? So we just spend a lot of time attacking each other and criticizing each other, and then practicing disarming and responding and
giving grades. How did you do?
Right. That's why I was saying that was an A+. But yeah, all the methods that we teach therapists, we actually bring to life using role plays, because that's how we find we can, pinpoint our mistakes, basically, right?
And one of my hopes, we've jump-started the David show a little bit today, called it the David and Jill show, and now it's about 200%.
It's very generous of you.
It's lively, it's interactive. You get, 1 + 1 is 3. That's my thinking about it. But maybe at some point I'll be able to, purchase some Zoom or something like that, so we could actually then get you folks involved. And go into little breakout rooms and practice some of the techniques, make it more like an actual Tuesday group at Stanford, but make that available for people all over the world. And you're doing that type of thing already.
Absolutely, right. In our therapist training groups, we have people break into breakout groups and facilitate practicing and things like that. Now, do you have a question on the screen you want to answer?
Well, I just thought we could read this comment by Carolyn Kim.
Okay.
Which I like. Do you want to read it?
Sure. So she says, "Hi, Dr. Burns. I learned so much from you and Jill, and now Matt May and Daniel Minty and others in our Thursday group. I've been able to help my patients get so much better, so much faster with team."
Thank you. That's such a neat thing. And that Thursday group, that's an online group, probably.
Absolutely, yeah. With like way too much talent in Matt May and Daniel Minty.
Yeah.
Co-leading it together.
Yeah.
So Rob is saying, I like that language at work. I'm ticked off at you, and you're probably ticked off at me too, but there was a little more. But yeah, basically saying, I'm feeling annoyed, I'm guessing you're feeling annoyed too. And that's kind of a nice way to say we're both in the same boat, and let's talk about it, right?
Yeah, so we can deepen our relationship.
Absolutely.
And if you're annoyed at me, I think it's for good reason, and I want to hear more, what you're thinking.
It does bring up the point though, of course, probably things are not going well for you if you're incredibly aggressive with other people, but my guess is things are not going well for you interpersonally also if you're hiding your feelings all the time. They're kind of equally egregious mistakes, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't, it's not wonderful for me to be in a relationship with someone who's really aggressive, but I actually kind of prefer that than to be in a relationship with someone who's always hiding their feelings, right?
Yeah.
But using these methods, you can kind of avoid either extreme.
Vandana says, "Hi, David and Jill. This is Vandana Aspen. Please give your wonderful husband, Matt, my warm hello." And says, "Love you guys. Triple, quadruple, exclamation mark." Thanks, Vandana. Can I, before we take another question here, I was having a colleague with John, who's with our group, who's a very intelligent person who's interested in team and in psychological issues in general. And we raised the question, could there be times when depression becomes an addiction? And I had never really thought of that, and that you can get into anger and hatred toward yourself as a way of kind of keeping your narcissism alive. That if you're beating up on yourself, it shows you have this other view of yourself, that you're addicted to this special, fantastic person.
Okay, kind of like high standards, is that? So you're beating up on yourself because you have such high standards.
And because you're eventually going to become this.
If you keep beating on yourself enough, then you'll keep it getting better and better.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that you're actually addicted to the self-hatred, thinking this is somehow going to propel you into greatness. And that was really brilliant of John to help me in my thinking, because I've been looking for a new dimension. And the reason I'm mentioning this right now is not only John was my consultant and kind of teaching me, but I was then able to use that insight on the hike today with someone who was we were doing all the positive reframing, and then when we got to the anger thing, I threw that out.
Like, I wonder if?
And that you're saying there's a narcissistic part of you that kind of beats up on yourself, and I said, sometimes people can get addicted to depression, and and self-criticism. She said like a light just went off in her brain and everything, all of her angst is dissolved. It was really incredible.
Wow.
So anyway, it's something to think about, because we think of the addiction model and the depression model is different, even though we look at all the factors that reinforce depression, the advantages, what it says about you, that's great. But this is really pushing it yet
it's almost
further.
like, you know, just want to someone sometimes almost feel tempted to beat themselves up, right? Like tempted to be self-critical, right? Like it's your go-to.
And that way I don't have to give up this idea that I'm going to become so special. And I think I was personally into that addiction model the first 7 years of my clinical practice. I did not want to give up the idea that I was going to become this special, super superior therapist.
So you kept being so hard on yourself to try to get there.
Yes, and I didn't want to hear to lower my standards. Because I thought,
you don't want to accept yourself as being a, someone who sometimes makes mistakes.
Just average, below average, just ordinary. That was not for me. You see, and then at a certain point in my career, it created so much pain for me. When interacting with challenging patients who were saying, you can't help me, and I took it as a power struggle. And it became very, very upset, because I had my concept of self-esteem based on this idea of how great I was going to become. And when I finally learned to say to my patients, you're right, I'm not helping you, and it's painful for me, and let's talk about it. Tell me where I've been screwing up, and where I'm not connecting with you. And all of a sudden, as you know so well, things melted, and I found I could connect with people, and I found so much joy now.
And sort of ironically, we can there is a way that we can still have high standards and want to be better in specific ways and yet not be depressed, right? So I could end a therapy session and think, oh man, I didn't do a good job of connecting with that patient, or I didn't do a good job of helping them with their intrusive thoughts today, and I really want to do a better job of that, but I don't think I am a terrible therapist because of that, right? I don't
have to beat up on myself and
and I'm not upset that I'm not better. I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, that was an error. Let me see if I can fix it. How am I going to do that better next time? That's also, that reminds me of one of my favorite methods, the be specific.
Absolutely.
That's relevant, but like this idea of, instead of thinking I'm supposed to be great or I'm terrible, I can just say, oh, kind of like, what did I not do right this time, or what specifically can I do differently?
And when I see the specific errors that I've made, all my pain disappears.
I feel kind of excited because I think, oh, well, I can work on that,
excited.
I can do that better next time.
Like I had a session this week. It was a total fiasco. And we recorded it. We won't be able to use it because it's so awful. And the individual felt just as angry and upset. It was a relationship issue.
I'm glad to hear you have those as well.
And I felt just horrible at the end, and like ashamed, and like I'm some kind of fraud or something. And then we got to pinpointing what the specific errors that were made. We kind of see this person convinced me so much he wanted to work on his marriage. So we tried to help him run into a wall of intense resistance. Like he didn't want to use I feel statements. All
so
this
it was
stuff.
Miserably unhelpful.
But
then you figured out what afterwards.
Afterwards, we started exchanging emails, and I got excited, and Helen, who was working with me, got excited, and he got excited, and now we're on a high. And I see it.
You didn't like crawl into a hole and say I'm terrible. You just thought, let me figure out like how I could do that better.
And then all of a sudden everything fell into place, and we're on the same page, and we know what has to be done right now. So it's such an interesting thing. It is. Do you want to do another question
and
here?
Here, should I move this up for you?
Well, we can go up. There was one I didn't. Maybe I'm going to rely on you. Do you want to answer TJ's question?
Let's see. I am doing the pleasure predicting sheet this week, and everything is about 50%.
His satisfaction, his outcome.
Which is about what I predicted. Not too fun, but not horrible. So what do I do with this information? How can I enjoy life more? I mean, I have a couple of thoughts I can share, and then I'm sure you can
Cool. Yeah.
think of some more to add.
Yeah.
I mean, one thought that I have is a lot of people will use the pleasure predicting sheet as one method in working on their depression. I'm guessing this is someone who's working on their own depression, right? And
Right.
so it's possible that negative thoughts are getting in the way of things being
Exactly.
pleasurable. And so
Exactly.
rather than just relying on the pleasure predicting sheet, I would probably take out a daily mood log and identify what are the thoughts that are coming up for you when you're doing these activities,
Yeah.
right? So if you're having, you know, negative thoughts at the same time as doing these activities, or if you're having lots of should statements, like this should be really fun, you know, like,
Or
right,
maybe telling yourself I'm a loser, or you're doing
Absolutely.
some fun thing, but you're beating up on yourself mentally. Well, then it's not going to be much fun.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so one thing you could be doing is pick up my book, Feeling Good, The New Mood Therapy, or the Feeling Good Handbook, and show you how to do a daily mood log and write down your thoughts and identify the distortions in them. I've learned or created between, I would say, 50 and 100 methods to help people overcome depression, and we have the concept of failing as fast as you can. Sometimes you have to try 5 or 10 different techniques that don't work until you find the one that does work. So if the pleasure predicting sheet doesn't, you know, float your boat or whatever they call, well, drop it and move on to another approach.
Yeah, and that would be the one I would probably start with, would be the daily mood log, and try to identify what are the negative thoughts that are coming up for that you're telling yourself when you're doing the activity or about the activity. Or even though sometimes having expectations like this should be really fun will crush the enjoyment of an activity, right? You're not really like present in the activity. You're just too busy thinking how good it should be.
Yes, I had a patient once who was kind of a high-level person in Philadelphia. A really nice guy, but, you know, kind of into a very successful, high-profile kind of business. But he would go into depressions at times, so that he was coming for a tune-up and to learn about that. But he told me he once went to the great Albert Ellis in New York.
Oh, I know where this is going.
Oh, you do?
Well, I'm going to guess.
Yeah. And I loved Ellis.
Yeah.
You know, he was fantastic.
Right.
Wild and obscene, but fantastic.
Forceful, right?
Yeah, forceful and creative.
Yeah.
But he went to Dr. Ellis because he was on vacation and he was depressed. And he was telling himself he should be happy on vacation.
Right.
So Ellis says, you know, where are the F is it written that you should have to be happy on vacation? Why don't you give yourself permission to be miserable on vacation? It's perfectly acceptable. And then when he heard that, he got all happy.
Right, totally. Thinking we should be other than how we are in any given moment, right, can kind of trip us up and take us out of the moment and make it less enjoyable. Yeah. So should I read this one? This would be moving more toward the anxiety. So it says, "Hi, Dr. Burns. I tune in for the live video with you every Sunday on Facebook, but never have the right questions to ask, so I thought I'd email my question. I'm trying to cure my own anxiety. I've been reading When Panic Attacks and following through with the book. I'm only really anxious and scared about having the actual attack, nothing else. So I'm thinking that flooding would be the greatest approach for me. What would your advice be for someone who is trying to self-cure and afraid of flooding on their own? I know the jumping jacks worked on your previous patient, but what do you suggest on someone combating it on their own? I'm ready to get my life back and wondering how I should go about it."
Yeah, well, why don't we let you launch in on this? I'll only make one introductory comment, and then I know you have a lot of fabulous things to say, but I don't use methods to cure disorders. I treat human beings, and I always use a daily mood log and have the patient write down your negative thoughts, like what are you telling yourself during a panic attack, and that will kind of provide some direction as to the kind of flooding that you would want to do. Like if you're having the thought, oh my gosh, during a panic attack, I'm going to die of a heart attack and pass out or something like that, or my windpipe is going to close off like the woman I described in my book, When Panic Attacks. Well, the reason the jumping jacks worked so well for her, she discovered that she couldn't bring on a heart attack no matter how hard she tried. She started doing strenuous jumping jacks and suddenly realized if she was having a heart attack, she couldn't possibly do that. And she went from horrific depression and sobbing to uncontrollable laughter. She practically fell on the floor when that dawned on her. She doubled over, and I've shown this video in workshops a lot too. People love it. On the other hand, I've had patients whose fear was that they were going to go crazy during the panic attack. So then I have them try to go crazy in the office. And if that freaks them out, then that's the exact thing to do. And I've had patients rolling around on the floor and screaming and talking in tongues and discovering that they can't go crazy no matter how hard they try. So the flooding, the kind of thing that you do, has to be geared in or tiled in to what the negative thought is. All that being said, I'll turn this over to you.
No, that's perfect. That sounds like what I would say as well. I mean, the idea is that when we design exposures, right, to have patients face their fears, we first do some cognitive work to figure out what they're actually most afraid of. And even when this person says, I'm afraid of having a panic attack, what is it that you're actually afraid of? Let's imagine you did have a panic attack. What are you so afraid of? That you'd embarrass yourself, that you'd throw up, that you'd die, that you'd pass out, that it would just be really uncomfortable, that it would last forever, right? So we want to think about what are you actually most afraid of, and then design an exposure to basically test that. It's almost like a hypothesis test, right?
Yeah, right.
I imagine X will happen, and then let's do the experiment and see if it actually happens. And the new learning occurs because you confront that fear, and sometimes needing to do it repeatedly or for long periods of time until you really kind of sufficiently disprove the hypothesis, and sometimes also kind of just get really good at and get used to experiencing uncomfortable sensations. The only other thing I'd say about this person, she's saying, what would be your advice for someone who's afraid of doing the flooding on your own? And I mean, my only thought with that is that, and again, we should say we're not prescribing treatments here, right? We're just kind of giving
just general
ideas.
Teaching, yeah.
Exactly. These are things you can read in a book too. But if you want to practice this and you're afraid of doing it on your own, well, you can also just ask a friend or a family member or something just to be there with you when you're doing it. Ultimately, I would want you to be, of course, a therapist, right? Ultimately, to get the most out of exposure, you'd want to do it under the most extreme of circumstances, right? Meaning alone, without the help nearby. But if you need a few steps to get you there, then we'll do things like that with patients too.
I think that's a part of why therapeutic empathy is so important, and you have to measure it at the end of sessions, because therapists' perceptions of empathy will typically be very different from the patients. But like if you're getting A+ empathy from your patients, then that will help them have the courage to do the difficult thing. And you have to go with the patient to the gates of hell and have to push patients to do the exposure once they've agreed to do it. And I think the personal connection there is is
right.
vital.
You need to have a very close, trusting, right, relationship with the patient.
Yeah, because like when I was in high school, I had this terrible fear of heights, and the drama teacher told me to get up on top of a ladder and just stand there for 15 minutes.
Such a wise drama teacher.
Yeah,
right?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's
impressive.
Yeah, I wanted to be on the stage crew of Brigadoon, but
right.
He says, you have to work up on the ceilings, and we can't have kids who have the fear of heights. And so he offered to help me get over it. He stood there at the bottom while I was standing on the top, and my anxiety on a 0 to 100 was 100.
Yeah.
But I feel that somehow his standing there, gave me the courage to do it.
Right.
And then suddenly after 15 minutes, my anxiety went from 100 to 0, like in 5 or 10 seconds.
Right.
And I said, Mr. Prishak, I think I'm cured. He says, okay, get down off the ladder. You can be on the stage crew of Brigadoon. And then I just loved it. Climbed up the wall to the ceiling, and I worked the lights and curtains. But I've had a lot of times, and once then we were out on the desert in Phoenix with this other family having a picnic or something, and they had this boy, David Olson. He was older, and we thought he was cool. He was like 5 years older and could drive, and he said, "Oh, there's this really cool cave I want to show you." And to get there, we had to like crawl on our stomachs. It was just him and me on a little cliff about this wide.
Okay.
And it was like a 1,000-foot drop off.
Yes.
to get to this cave. And then at a certain point, it was broken. And so you had to like go across that. It was like terrifying, but he was just saying, "Oh, it's going to be fine."
Right.
Just, you know,
Right.
And I actually got out to that cave.
Wow.
And then he was saying, "It's a good thing there isn't a mountain lion in here, because you know, a lot of times they're living in there." And then
So you were lucky.
we crawled back, but I don't think I could have done that
without that.
Well, I wouldn't have.
Yeah. Well, and if you think about it, though, there are two qualities to both of those people you just described, even though they weren't therapists. And I think we talk about this a lot. And one is that you trusted them, right?
Yeah.
So you had the rapport,
Yeah.
which is that empathy piece. But the other is also that they were not afraid of your anxiety, basically, because that's a really big, important quality that therapists have to have, right? So many therapists are empathic, but they're not actually pushy enough, if you will, or convincing enough, or they're afraid of making their patients feel anxious. Yeah. And of course, in order to get over their anxiety, patients must feel anxious, right?
Must confront the fear.
Absolutely. And so the therapist actually has to be really comfortable, you know, in the midst of their patients feeling quite anxious and not worried they're going to make them feel worse and all that kind of thing.
I think that's part of why it works. And they've done surveys of American mental health professionals who work with anxiety patients, and only 25 or 30% of them use exposure. Right. The rest of the therapists get hypnotized by the patient into not using exposure because they think, oh, the patient will decompensate or something terrible will happen, and I have to talk about their childhood endlessly. So that's another problem too. Yeah. Also, we have a nice comment here from D. James Smith, and then we'll take another question. Finally, a chance to thank you for all I've learned from podcasts of yours. Well, thank you so much. It means a lot to me and to Fabrice as well. To get that kind of feedback, it makes it all kind of worthwhile.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot from patients that are listening to your free podcasts as well, and finding them really useful.
Yeah, neat. We can take this question, or we can go into Tim Barron's question here. You want to see about
either one? Sure. Yeah, you want me to read it?
Yeah.
Okay, do you have suggestions for calming yourself down when you would rather be right than closer to the person in the moment? So this is going back to our 5 secrets demo, right?
Yeah. I remember when I was in 7th grade, I was walking across the schoolyard. I remember telling myself, I don't care if I don't have any friends as long as I'm right.
I know a lot of people feel that way, you know, or at least feel that way in the moment, right?
Yeah.
In a moment, you feel like it's more important to be right than it is to be close to the person that you're angry with. Yeah.
And I think there's 2 answers to this. One is motivational and one is cognitive. You can do a cost-benefit analysis. You know, what are the advantages and disadvantages of blaming this person and being pissed off? What are the advantages and disadvantages of expressing my feelings in a constructive way and working to hear the truth and what they have to say and to develop a more loving relationship. And
that's something you'd probably be doing, you know, out of, not in the moment, right? Someone doesn't hurl an attack at you and you're like, hang on just a sec while I do my CBA, right? But it's something most people probably that you're having some conflict with, or that are pushing your buttons, or someone that you see regularly, right? So in a quiet moment, to actually sit down and go, what are all the advantages of being right instead of, you know, and what are all the disadvantages?
And then what are the advantages of blaming the other person? In my book, Feeling Good Together, I published a list that my daughter and I came up with, 35 completely distinct, something like that, advantages of blaming
another person.
You feel morally superior, and you feel you're right and they're wrong, and you know, on and on and on.
Right. And then on the other hand, it is possible to really get in the mindset where you let that go, right? Where you realize, like, yeah, those are all advantages, but it feels much more important to me to actually be close to this person, right? I really, really want. So you'll only be able to be successful in the moment if you really have convinced yourself, right, that it's more important to have a close relationship than it is to be right.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you also, you can do 5 secrets training as well as a daily mood log. If you're upset, what are you telling yourself?
Right.
What are your
you
negative
probably have
thoughts?
Lots of should statements toward the other person that you could work on, right?
Yeah, as well as should statements against yourself, because if criticizing you, you may be feeling guilty, and so you start arguing with them because you're inwardly, beating up on up on yourself.
And then I don't know if he's asking, do you have suggestions for calming yourself down, like in the moment? And I mean, I think there's nothing wrong with saying to someone, oh, I'm having a really hard time responding right now, and I don't want to say anything that I'm going to regret later. I think I need a few minutes. To literally give yourself a time out. Yeah. If someone attacks you, I'm sure they'd rather hear that than just have you defend yourself, right? If all you're capable of doing is an angry or defensive response, I'd rather not respond at all, but say something like, I care about you and I need a minute to collect my thoughts before I can really give you the kind of response I want.
Yeah, and you can also use an I feel statement. There's a difference between sharing your feelings and attacking with your feelings.
Yeah.
And most people, I hate to say this, don't want to share their feelings. They want to attack. It's basic human nature. They want to hurt the other person, put the other person down. But you can say something like, I'm just feeling really hurt and anxious and kind of ticked off at you right now. And I just need to calm down a little bit. And I really care for you too, and want to talk this through and develop a better relationship. But I'm just kind of fuming at the moment. How's that?
Sure. Sounds good. Honest, right?
Yeah.
It's not acting on your feelings, it's just sharing them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Look, you want to do this one?
Sure. So let's see. This one was also about...
How are you liking the David and Jill show?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, it's fun. I mean, any excuse to hang out with you is fun for me.
Yeah,
so
that's what
I hope
think
it's
too.
Useful to anyone out there, but...
We'll see. You can email and let us know. I don't have formal feedback like with the group.
Right. I know.
Something like that could be set up too, and find out how people like what's happening or what changes.
So this
look at this. This is good. Look at.
We got some hearts and flowers across the bottom.
That looks good.
Okay, so this one says, if the patient is resistant to trying shame attacking, is there an effective way to coax them to try it? If the patient is still resistant, what are other methods you find effective to defeating social anxiety?
Well, first we have to say, because not everyone knows what a shame attacking exercise is. What is a shame attacking exercise, Jill?
So it's based on the idea that it's not really our flaws that are our problems. It's our shame about our flaws that are our problems. And so what we need to do is actually, when you have a patient or your own self feel very self-conscious and socially anxious, the goal is not to try to be perfect in social situations, but actually to share your flaws and vulnerabilities, and even to kind of go out there and do things that might be goofy or shameful, right? As a form of exposure. It's exposure therapy for social anxiety.
Yeah, you do something bizarre in public to make a fool of yourself on purpose in order to learn that the world doesn't come to an end. And we have a rule that therapists have to do it before you can ask patients to do it. So I've done a ton of them myself, but
you're a master of the shame attacking. You have no shame, so that works.
But I can give a great vignette on so sometimes you have to push the patient.
Yeah.
And this one will be a little X-rated, so if you have sensitive ears, you don't want to get disillusioned about therapists using four-letter words. You should turn off the sound for a minute. But I had a young man who I treated in Philadelphia, really nice guy that I liked a lot. And he came to me at about age 31 or 32 after having had 25 years of failed psychoanalysis, 5 days a week. And his father had, this was the era where everyone thought psychoanalysis is going to be good for what ails you.
Right.
So the father, who was a physician, had sent him thinking, in case he has any problems, or this way he'll be able to develop better friendships, he'll be psychoanalyzed.
Okay, so it was like prophylactic? Like protective?
Yeah.
Wow,
but the problem was
quite an investment.
He spent all of his time with the psychoanalyst. He never played with the other kids. and so he became extremely shy and awkward, and all he wanted to do was to get laid. That was his main goal in coming to therapy.
So he came to the right therapist, right?
And I said, well, sure, I can show you how to do that. That's my specialty. I wrote a book about that, Intimate Connections, and I can show you how to flirt and play the dating game and all of that. but I would give him homework assignments that he would never complete.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got feeling kind of ticked off at him, but I was trying to act polite and keep my cool. And he wasn't getting anywhere in therapy. And one day he said to me, Dr. Burns, don't you ever get pissed off at me? Haven't you noticed how passive aggressive I am? I never do what you ask me.
Learned that in his years of analysis, right?
Yeah, and he says, you seem kind of like a fake to me.
Wow.
And then,
good for him for being honest, right?
Absolutely. And so then I said, I'm going to take a chance. Now, what I said to him, I wouldn't say to 99% of my patients, but I thought it would work. I thought I had a good relationship. I said, listen, I give you assignments every week, and if you ever did one of the damn assignments, you could change your life in a week. I could show you how to get laid within a week. But no, you won't do what I say. Come in, whine, like you've had 25 years of whining training. You want to know why you're like this? Well, all I want to do is help you change your life. And as far as I'm concerned, I think you ought to piss or get off the fucking pot.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then it just really affected him well. He really liked that. And he says, I just respect you so much for saying that. And they says, what do you want me to do? I said, we
don't teach that in our Tuesday.
No, at Stanford, we're not allowed to. I'll probably be banned from Facebook. So then he said, what do you want me to do? I said, well, you're so afraid of making a fool of yourself in public. What I want you to do is when you go, he drove all the way from New York for sessions.
Yeah.
I said, drive back to New York and then get on a subway. And at every street, I want you to jump up out of your chair and shout out the name of the street. And then sit down again, like, this is 34th Street.
Right.
Like this type of thing. He says, oh, I can't.
And that's a good example. The question was about shame attacking experts, right? So that's a good example of shame attacking, right? It's just kind of ridiculous. It draws attention to yourself. But the truth is, no one really cares, right?
Exactly.
Like, life goes on.
Exactly. So
it seems like it's going to be so embarrassing and humiliating, but no one actually cares.
So he was scared, but he said, I'll do it. I promise. I'm really going to do it.
Uh-huh.
And he came back the next week, and he said he actually did it. He got on the subway, and he started leaping up in the air and shouting out, you know.
Being ridiculous.
No one seemed to care.
Right.
Except there was this, I'm not supposed to use sexist language, but there was a young woman who he found very attractive, kind of eyeing him. And then she said to him, you know, what are you doing?
Right.
And he said, well, I've been shy all of my life. And my shrink told me to do this, you know, make a fool of myself to try to get over my shyness. And because I'm really just, I'm trying to get a date, but I'm too shy to, you know,
to ask anyone out.
To ask anyone out. And then she said, well, I think what you're doing is really cool. I think you're kind of cute. Would you like my phone number? And he couldn't believe it. So he got her phone number, ran home, got a date, went out with her, got laid. I'm not supposed to say this, you know. But and then all of a sudden he kind of found his flirtatious self and started flirting like with women. And he had several dates, and he had just changed his life. But the point of the story, the teaching point, is that sometimes you have to push.
Right.
And that requires a good therapeutic relationship. I wasn't trying to be mean to him. I was trying to, you know, smash through his
resistance,
defenses,
right? His resistance to actually do something about the problem.
I find I often have to do that with anxious patients, and you've told me how you do it too. But when they confront their worst fear, when they're ready for enlightenment, they want to run away in the opposite direction.
And of course they do, right? I mean, that fight or flight response kicks in, and we want to run away, or we want to, flee the situation. And it's again, as a therapist, knowing that what our patient needs to do, in that moment is some form of exposure therapy. And of course, we don't force our patients to do things against their will, and we can't. I mean, never would, but if we have a good relationship, we can let them know that we absolutely believe that what they need to do to get over their anxiety is X, Y, and Z. I had a patient who had a major claustrophobia and you know, had a really good relationship with me, really good rapport, trust, and pretty much, you know, after like a really good evaluation and maybe one session of kind of some cognitive therapy stuff to figure out what he was actually most afraid of, he was willing to he brought in a blanket and wrapped his legs tightly in the blanket, brought in a ski parka, brought in a hat. Like we basically did all of these things to make him feel very tight and in a closed space. And then this is why it's helpful to get their cognitions. His fear was that he was going to get so hot and get overheated. And so then I brought in my space heater and cranked up the heat. And I mean, in the end, it was sort of fun. We were laughing, and it's like the question we ask is there anything you can do to make yourself more anxious? Right? More uncomfortable.
Right.
So yeah, it takes some pushing, and it takes confidence on the part of the therapist too, right?
Yes. And guess what?
Our time is up.
Yeah, so this is the end of the David and Jill show, and it certainly it didn't exceed my expectations, because my expectations were sky high, because working with you was always awesome. And
so
it was
much fun.
Yeah, it was fun and awesome. And maybe you folks can kind of let us know what you thought about it today, and maybe we can entice Jill to come back for the David and Jill
That would be fun.
Edition 2.
It would be helpful for people to say what they'd like to see more of too, right? The more specific, what they liked, and what questions, or if we should do role plays, or how else we could use the time in a way that would be helpful.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. So you could email Jill.
It's Jill Levitt at feelinggoodinstitute.com.
And JILLLEVITT, all one word?
Yes, exactly.
And feelinggoodinstitute.com is all one word.
Exactly.
And are you open for patients? Or are you like 10 months waiting list as usual?
I am either able to take on one or two, or find a really good referral. So I'm always happy if people call to refer them to an awesome colleague. And
then again, if they go to that link, the February 17th, 2018, if you go to my website, and then there's blogs, and this is called the Feeling Good blog, and it's two back, the February 18th, and then you'll find 5 upcoming Team CBT training opportunities, plus, like for example, on March 5th and March 26th at 11 a.m. Pacific time, we have this fantastic therapist, Dr. Jill Levitt, doing a free 1-hour webinar that you even get CE credit for it.
Right, can't beat that.
Yeah, and then here's an online one with Taylor Chesney in New York on how to do Team CBT with children. That's 21 CE hours, and it's 12 Thursdays in a row starting on March 8th.
Yeah, and Taylor's an excellent teacher.
Oh, yeah, she is fantastic. She was in our Tuesday group for 2 years or more, and then with her husband moved back to New York and started the Feeling Good Institute there in Manhattan, in New York City. That's a paid one, but very reasonable. And then we've got a skills, a case-based course with Daniel Menti.
Yeah.
And then we've got this Jill Levitt coming up again, Practical Team CBT Methods for Depression, Anxiety, and Unwanted Habits with Dr. Jill Levitt. 5 CEs, meet 6 Mondays beginning April 16th, 11 Pacific time to 12:45. That's almost 2 hours.
Right.
And then
and then we've got the workshop that you and I are doing together, right, on May 20th.
Yes.
And we're doing that in person in Palo Alto, and then it's also going to be live streamed, so people can attend just from the comfort of their own computers, as long as they have, a internet connection, basically.
Yes, and this is the same workshop that we presented in San Diego at the
Association of Behavioral and Cognitive Therapies,
right?
ABCT.
We did a full workshop. It went really well.
Yeah.
And this is a chance for some of the rest of you to learn. We walked. Oh yeah.
Well, the whole team model. So testing, empathy, agenda setting, and methods,
right. But in addition, we promised to bring at least 60% of the audience to a state of euphoric enlightenment.
Fantastic.
Right?
Yeah, right. We've got high expectations.
But that always happens.
No, because the idea being that we have therapists do their own personal work, like in learning these methods, we're also teaching you to work on your own negative thoughts, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's about it. Thanks to Ty. Do you know Ty? Tyann?
Oh, yes, Tyann. Yes.
And who's been helping. She's from Oklahoma City, works in prenatal and
she's
postpartum depression using cognitive approach rather than pushing pills,
Yeah.
and Lisa Kelly, who's been kind of making all of this stuff
Absolutely.
happen. So
Our
thanks.
PR maven.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So thank you for all of you, and
High five.
yeah. Okay, bye everybody.
Bye,
and
everyone.
thanks again.